we are going to kick off, as I think should be appropriate for an Email Insider Summit, with one of the biggest email senders on the planet. Publishers Clearinghouse sends over 1 billion emails a year. Company has a long legacy in maintaining massive databases of consumers from back in the day when those of us in the magazine industry used to call it the list. And I remember even as a kid licking the back of all of these little stamps that Publishers Clearinghouse would send us to goad me back into subscribing to some magazines and being a part of that list. Publishers Clearinghouse really understands the value of keeping that list clean and actionable and also respectful of the customer's privacy. That tradition has unique challenges ahead. And we have with us today Sal Tripi, who's the VP Digital Operations and Compliance at Publishers Clearinghouse. It's the U.S. Publishers Clearinghouse. It is, of course, the United States' largest sweepstakes company. And Sal has been with PCH for over 25 years. He manages digital operations, ad operations, compliance, and privacy. Sal, how are you doing?
Very good. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the energy you guys are bringing to this in a unique time.
Sal is actually a veteran of working with us on email. It goes way back, but it's been a number of years since we've had you. Sal, before we start, I want to do another poll because we're going to be talking about this, and I want to see where our audience is on this, about how our audience would rate their organization's preparedness for compliance with looming privacy regulations. So let's bring up that poll. Okay. It's a priority. Plans and policies are in place. Plans are in place, but not fully implemented. Third choice, we are not prepared. But let's start. Let's give people a few seconds to answer that, and we'll come back to it, Sal. But tell us, I know that first-party data is, of course, the mantra this year for a lot of different reasons. Companies really are focusing on gathering that first-party data and creating their own trove to work with more directly to consumers. How does Publishers Clearinghouse go about harvesting that data? And how has that been retooled over the last couple of years as you've had to take into consideration some of the looming regulations and policy changes and tech changes?
Yeah, it's really an interesting point because as consumer expectations are increasing, they're expecting more and more personalized experiences. They don't want to be treated like one in a million. They want to be treated like one. It's getting more and more difficult to get that actionable data. It used to be you were able to acquire real quality third-party data from third parties and leverage that in. That world is shrinking. Brands now have to rely on themselves for the most part to collect quality first-party data. And there's a lot of different ways of doing it. Most are really, really bad. Some are really good. Some are good and engaging. The way we've approached collecting a first-party data is not to put a survey in front of somebody and say, give me all your data, tell me your likes, tell me your what you don't like, what do you want to receive? That's very mundane, very boring. People tend not to engage with that sort of thing. They click a button or two. We tend to take a staggered approach where we're interrupting people's visits to us with engaging sweepstakes, perhaps where we're picking up a profile attribute. Do you like the hunting, if they're in some sort of outdoor engagement activity? Do you like the hunting sweepstakes where you could win a hunting prize, or do you like the race car sweepstakes? And we're slowly building that on where it doesn't feel to the consumer like we're collecting this first party data for that, but we're really building a profile of what consumers like, what they don't like in an engaging way, and giving them what they came to us for, which is a nice sweeps opportunity.
So I think maybe some of the creative that we can show, and that might illustrate some of the ways.
Yeah, sure.
Let's share at least one screen of some of those examples. Why don't you tell us a couple of things about how this is working and describe how that works to sort of what you described as sort of a funnel where you're actually bringing people through stages to identify what their likes and dislikes are.
Yeah, sure. So the one in the center, Great American Sweepstakes, that's a great one. It's a brand new one that we just launched a short time ago. It's working really, really well. So we've created these 7 different sweeps opportunities where people can go down. They can either take advantage of hunting, fishing, country music, whatever it is that they like. And now all of a sudden we have an affinity for them. They're a pets affinity, a cars affinity, sports affinity. These are real valuable affinities for not only our own merchandise and our own emails that are being sent, but advertisements who are serving on the site. We're able to take these, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but take these affinities and immediately, get this data actionable so that the next page, the first email they get, is targeted towards whatever affinity that they're doing. And then we're slowly building on it from there. And we have this cascade, and we're working with internal tools as well as external tools to just build that, connection with the consumer where we're really getting to know them. The one on the bottom, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
The one on the bottom left is really one where we're asking them their interest, but then taking them to the sweepstakes of that, where, country music, sports, cars, and all these things are being tested against each other to see which ones the consumers are liking, which ones are they interested in, what don't they do. What you're not going to see here is this big check form of 15 different boxes for the consumer to go in, that boring thing that everybody does. And they do really well and it works, but this is much more personal, and the consumers are engaging with it at a much higher rate. And the data we're getting is very accurate.
So let them show you through their behaviors what they want, rather than have to tell you explicitly.
Exactly, and build on it. We're not trying to get the mother load of data in one sitting. We know customers are going to come back. They're going to come back often if we do the right things. So each time they come back, try to get another little nugget of data that we can leverage from that point forward.
Mm-hmm. So before we get into actually how you're managing that data and making the best use of it, let's go back to our poll. And it seems as if a good number, a pretty high percentage of our attendees feel that managing data, managing privacy, and responding to looming regulations is something that they've placed a priority on, and they're planning, and they have policies in place for it. Do you find this is true as you're talking to colleagues in the field?
These numbers are a little bit surprising, very encouraging, but a little bit surprising. Mm-hmm. As I talk to colleagues in the field, I see a lot of them are still in the planning stages. Mm-hmm. Which is unfortunate because the law went into effect and is now enforceable as of July 1, CCPA in particular. Right. But this is very encouraging. Either we've got, at this conference, a really good group of quality marketers, or the world has come a long way. It goes without saying. If you come to,
well, what have been the most important changes that you guys have made? Let's start internally to organize departments and the data itself, to ensure that you're both, minimizing risk, but also optimizing value. I mean, some of this is just in the way you organize who touches it and how you organize communications internally over this stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably, I mean, when CCPA was passed and we started to first really look at this, it was really looked at as an albatross. What do we have to do to comply? Mm-hmm. But the more we got into it, the more we saw that there was some value coming out of it. And that is really the organization and actionability of our data, and jettisoning of some legacy data that was way beyond its useful life. Mm-hmm. So what we did was we centered around a data governance area, and we put a lot of time and effort into that data governance area, where, we're probably like most organizations, we had very siloed areas. Certain areas were responsible for certain things, and each one would categorize and use data slightly different through their marketing channels. And, you could end up with a very disjointed experience for a consumer based on what channel they're coming in for. They might be treated differently. So we centralized all the data, put meaning behind the data, meaning, we didn't have two different attributes calling two different definitions for the same segment across business units. Put a data governance czar, internal czar, over our data, so that if somebody's looking for people with a certain affinity, it was a common affinity being used across it. Really took stock of the data we had. Now, you could imagine, we've been around since the mid-50s. We've been collecting data a long time. We had a lot of data on basically everybody in the United States, past and present. Mm-hmm. So we went through an enormous exercise where we purged off an enormous amount of data that was beyond its useful life, put the remaining data into a lockdown data mart, and did all the standard things of pseudonymizing all the data, keeping it in a lock and key, but then taking that pseudonymized data, bringing it up to the surface with the core systems that are running PCH's programs to allow it to be actionable through a variety of different technologies we use, both homegrown and third party.
Yeah, how do you define actionable for your data, and has that changed at all over the last years, especially as you've been winnowing through all this data?
Absolutely. It certainly has changed. Actionable, well, the law didn't change the definition of actionable. Customers' expectations did. As they became more and more sophisticated, as they became more and more tired of having to scroll through multiple pages to get to the content they want. They expect that content on the page that they're landing on, when they click it. They have defined what actionable is. Actionable used to be able to collect data, put it in batches, send it to a third party, send it to an internal system. And maybe if you were lucky, in 2 or 3 days, that data would be actionable on the site. Today's definition of actionable is if you collect it on page 1, you're using it on page 2 and 3 and 4. And we, as well as a lot of other companies, are struggling with that, to alter that content through the user experience based on what they just did 5 seconds, 3 seconds ago.
What are the key steps that that marketers need to go through to ensure that actionability? And apparently, it's not just actionability; it's a timing thing. It really needs to be done in real time.
In real time, absolutely.
So, what are the key things you've learned about getting there?
It's really hard. It's really hard, and it's not easy, and it takes an investment in both technology and it takes an investment in organization. So, defining out what data means and how it could be used and should be used is really the first thing. And that gets back to my comments on data governance, making sure data governance has a seat at the table as marketing is doing their planning, so that they're providing guidance to the marketers on how and what they should be using across all marketing programs, but dealing with each one individually. 2, taking the technology and making sure the technology is able to consume the data in real time, and the third-party technology able to consume the data in real time and replay it back to the consumer. So it takes both an investment in time, talent, and technology to get that done.
And what are some examples of what are some of the coolest things you guys are doing in real time, so that people's behaviors are actually reflected very quickly in their interactions with PCH?
Sure, and I just want to be honest. This is something that's evolving at PCH. We haven't solved the world's problems on this. We're evolving as time goes on. But some of the things we're doing is, immediately upon capturing of those data profiles that we were talking about earlier, that data is being captured and is being made available to both our ESP, which is a third party, and several internal systems, so that as the consumer gets on that next page, it's being stored and we're able to alter content on that next page. Within the email, we're able to pull the right content from our site based on what they just did. Mm-hmm. So we think that's pretty cool. That was a pretty big step forward.
What are the key regulatory, legal, and consumer tech trends that are driving your actions right now? What are the things that you're most wary of, or paying closest attention to, or trying to accommodate or make sure you have things in place for first?
Yeah, I think the first thing that people need to really focus on is the transparency action for the consumer. Consumers are willing to provide data, they're willing to engage, but there's laws and there's expectations that they're going to know and understand what's happening. So making sure that there's transparency in place. There's CCPA in particular has disclosure requirements and do not share requirements and everything along those lines that we need to take into consideration. So making sure those disclaimers are, clear, written in a language that a consumer could understand. No longer is legalese and a 55-page privacy policy appropriate. It has to be appropriate for the users. The just-in-time notices and the transparency as far as what third parties and vendors you're dealing with, that's critical to making sure any of the regulations. If we're trying to keep track of each and every regulation, I think you're going to find yourself in a position that you're going to miss one, because they're coming too frequently. And I think you got to take the premises of what's in all of these regulations. Well, we have to be transparent. We have to tell the consumers what we're doing. We have to respect their choices. A consumer can nuke their data, get access to their data, or tell you can have their data, but don't share it with third party. And respect those principles. Respect those principles not only in the letter of the law, but the nature in which they're intended. CCPA is written, there's a lot of nebulous areas of CCPA, and there's no case law to go back on and look at this point in time to say, okay, what did they really mean? So the position that we've taken is we've tried to understand both the letter of the law, but really the intention. What is it that they're trying to do? Mm-hmm. And make sure that we're complying with that and
What's
doing.
a good example of that? where you feel you're following the spirit rather than the letter.
Well, in the do not share area of it, there's sharing that occurs within the ad ecosystem. There's sharing that occurs on the backend systems. It's really not clear exactly what should and shouldn't be doing. So we've adopted a very strict. We have multiple processes that go on when somebody clicks that do not share button, where we've said, they said do not share. So let's say at the highest level, we're not going to share it. We're not going to share it in the ad ecosystem. We're not going to share it on the backend files. We're going to provide it to our service providers with appropriate contract and protections in place that it's not going to get shared beyond that. And we're going to respect that. And as the law evolves, then we'll take it from there.
So how much control do you give them, by the way?
We give them, pretty much total control. Consumers can delete their data. They get access to their data. And when we give access to their data, we don't only give access to the data we've collected in the last 12 months. This is another area that I think is the spirit of it. We give access to their data. They want to know what their data is. CCPA says you got to go back 12 months. I don't want to go
too far into it. Where can somebody go at your site to find their data, to find the ways in which you're interacting with them, so maybe they could see a good example?
There's if they go to our site and they go to the CCPA disclosures, you have to fill out a form and validate your authenticity. You have to authenticate the data. But then what we do is we pull it into the back end, because we don't make it readily available on the site, because there's so many different disparate systems. We have to go pull it together, but then they'll get back a PDF with all the data we've ever collected. But if they complete one of those requests for access forms, they'll get that. It's a lot of work, so I like only one person to do it and then share it, as opposed to 85 or 90 people.
I just blew up your organization with one question, Sal. So you send a sizable amount of email.
I just want to correct you. It's actually 6 billion a year.
Really? 6 billion a year?
Yes.
Wow. Beyond the usual advice to be relevant, what specifically is working and proven not to work in keeping the customer base responsive?
I think the best advice I can give to anybody is to be bold and break the rules. We live in an industry that's governed by, here are the best practices, here are the top tips, here's what your email should look like, here's what this is. And if you look at Publishers Clearinghouse emails, we break probably 50% of the rules that are all considered to be industry standard best practices.
Let's bring some of them up. We've got a slide that's got some of your emails. So let's show them.
Oh, these aren't emails. I'm sorry. These are just different sites. I didn't send you.
Right. Well,
But what are emails?
Let's talk about how you're breaking the rules.
Yeah. We break the rules all the time. Image to text ratio. What should be a button? What shouldn't be a button? What's here? How a template should be laid out. Because the if you want to continue to send out average industry standard emails and continue to do that for the rest of your life, keep doing that. We've got, I just want to share some stats. Our average click rate as a percentage of sent, not opened, as a percentage of sent is 28%. So we send out 100 emails, 28 people are clicking through. Because they're different and because they deliver on what the consumer wants. The consumer came to us with an expectation. We deliver that expectation in a variety of ways. Every email mails differently. We mail people 2-3 times a day at some points in time, some people even more than that, and they're clicking at that rate. But what we're doing is, one, the emails look different. Every single email that they get looks different. You're not going to see the same template that they get on day one that until maybe day 40. Everything is different. As somebody engages, they go through this process of where we're trying to say, okay, what's the right level of emails for them? Do they want to get 1 email a day? Do they want to get 3? Based on their engagement, we're doing modeling based on how they're engaging. The more they engage without just demonstrating patterns of unsubscribes, we're going to keep sending. Then we monitor them as certain activities occur that the modeling team says, okay, this person needs to be slowed down, and we'll bring them down, and we'll put them in what's called a protected class. all of those things using data that we've captured or haven't captured because they haven't engaged is what's driving those things.
And you made early, there was a really interesting, it really grabbed my attention early on in your description, that no two emails look alike, that you're not taking a real templated approach, that this is an email from this brand, this is how you recognize it, this is the coloring, this is the template, this is what Best Buy is sending you now. It's driven more by the creative. This is something interesting that's engaging my eye or my imagination. It just happens to be coming from publishers. It's
different. Absolutely. Yeah. It's different. Color schemes are different. Everything is different. Some may be more official looking. Some may be fun looking, to try to make it engaging so that it looks different. People are coming to us for a sweeps opportunity. If we don't make that fun and engaging, they're going to think they got the same thing day after day after day. We've got to make it look different, because it is different. It's a different opportunity every day.
Years ago, there was a great book called The Entertainment Economy that reminded us that people want to be entertained. That's what engages.
That's exactly it.
We often forget that.
Steve, if I could share a very quick story just about being bold and breaking the rules. I was at a competing event probably about 8 or 9 years ago. And one of our industry leaders was at the bar, where we would always gather. We were at the bar, and overheard, he didn't know me, I didn't know him, but he was really an industry insider that really knew. And the guy was just ragging on Publishers Clearinghouse emails. They are the ugliest thing in the world. They don't know how that company says, and I was just listening in. And we ended up, I ended up going over and introducing myself to him. And it was really an engaging conversation, because, he was basing it on industry practices. So I opened up, went back, got the laptop, opened up, showed him the stats. And this gentleman, who has become a very good friend of mine, ended up writing a book. And in the book, there's a chapter called Breaking the Rules. Ugly is not always bad. And it's finding what works for your business. Don't try to be the same as Best Buy, as McDonald's, as anybody else. Be your own brand. It's okay to be ugly as long as it works.
It's okay to be ugly. There's a mantra.
Look at me. There you go.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, me too. I think we're partners. I want to remind everybody we're going to go to Q&A in a second. So please, if you have questions of Sal, please either enter them into the either raise your hand and Lisa will come to you, or enter some questions into the chat window. What specific? So you're working with a lot of third-party vendors. And that, of course, is one of the choke points when it comes to privacy, data security, data policies. What specifically are you demanding of third-party vendors? And how do you see that tech landscape over the next year or so as a result of this new attention to data and privacy?
Yeah, I think the vendor landscape is evolving and continuing to evolve. There's leaders and there's laggards and there's followers. And again, just like doing the right thing for your business as far as testing and finding the right approach, same goes true for vendors. Mm-hmm. Every business needs something a little bit different. And if you look at our suite of vendors, we're dealing with some of the industry leaders, some of the ones that are not necessarily industry leaders, but they're right for our business. So when we engage with a vendor, the key thing is not to pull up the Forrester report and say, okay, who's the best XYZ? The key is to define out our use cases. And then we take those use cases out to the industry and we say, okay, how best can you serve for our use case? Our use case is different, and seeing how they perform. Then once we do a selection, it's really, setting standards and holding them accountable, evaluating their security standards, evaluating their contract with their service providers, going in and really getting under the covers to understand how your data is being processed by them. With all these laws, with all the new regulations, you are responsible for your vendors and to make sure that your vendors are meeting the standards that you lay forward in your privacy policy and in your disclosures. So, I tell my entire team all the time, it's critical that you know the vendor's business better than them. You need to understand what they're obligated to do, what they should be doing, what the competitors are doing, and what you need them to do for yourself, and hold them accountable. And any good vendor is going to love that approach because it helps make them better.
Let's see. Let me bring in Lisa and let's see if we have some questions.
Hey, Sal, sorry, I was just trying to request my information from your website. So
you're going to get a lot of emails, Lisa.
Well, we do have some questions. First, Anna Warner. She has a question for you, Sal. Go ahead, Anna.
Sure.
Hey Sal, it's Anna from Belk.
Hi, Anna.
You had mentioned that some of your first party data is from customers self-selecting their interests.
Yes.
I was wondering how much success you have with getting a good volume of people to actually provide their interests. And then also, what are your thoughts about the difference between what people say they're interested in versus what their behavior actually proves they're interested in?
Really good question. And we do get enormous scale because with our business, one of the things we can easily tie it to is different instant win or sweepstakes type opportunities. So we're able to drive scale there. People come to us for a sweeps opportunity or for an instant win opportunity. So by giving them multiple options of getting that same opportunity through different sweeps types environments, we're able to get very, very good quality data. We have found people are very open to providing the data to us and providing their interest to us to make their experience better. Again, we don't do it as a general checklist. Tell us what you want, tell us what you're interested in so we can market to you, so we can sell. You know, that's obviously not what we do. We do it, you know, a hunting, you're in our outdoor area. Do you want to win a hunting product or do you want to win a fishing product? Well, gee, I just found out Steve's a fisherman and he's not a hunter, and Lisa's a hunter and not, so we've been able to grow scale that pretty well on that. And we find the quality is very good. Our advertisers, the people that, the advertisers who run on our sites, they've been very satisfied with the results. Our own products being sold also support the quality is pretty high.
Thanks, Sal.
No, we've got several. That's great.
Yeah, and we have a question from Yvonne Kinzer.
Hi. So I first of all, I love the breaking the rules. I totally believe that we have to break the rules in order to stand out. But when we talk about brand building and we break the rules in terms of consistency, how do you build a coherent brand without that consistency in look and feel?
Well, I don't think look and feel has to define a brand. I think a brand could be defined by anything. And with us, our brand is defined by free to play, instant win, and sweepstakes opportunities. Now, how we wrap that and how we show that to the consumer is what I'm talking about as being different and building, making it look different. If we're fighting boredom. When you're mailing as frequently as we are, you're fighting boredom. The customer should never look and say, did I open this already? Did I see this already? Everything should be new, should be fresh, should be specific. One of the areas that, we had to do was when COVID hit, we had to very quickly, some of our emails are urgent, urgent, the prizes eliminated, prizes expiring today. That's a subject line that would drive a lot of response. Back in March, April, and May, putting urgent in a subject line was not the best idea for the consumers because they were getting urgent CDC delivery, or CDC notification. So we had to go in and make that change. But even though we made the change, it was still all about different ways of promoting that sweepstakes, different ways of promoting the opportunity of the day, being brand consistent. Prize Patrol is coming. You could win on site today. We can be at your door tomorrow. Being very brand consistent. Some of the language being the same, but the view of it is very, very different, whether it be urgent or warm or another mechanism.
That is, I think let's squeeze one more quick one in.
Okay.
I see Chester's in line.
Chester Bullock. Hi, Chester. He's
sorry, I was on mute. I was just asking a snarky question about who ripped on his emails. I'm guessing I know who it was, but guess it's wrong. But I'm pretty sure I know who.
Well, do we want to guess?
Yeah, Chester, I'll give you a guess.
Well, my first thought was Andrew because that's just Andrew, but no, I'm thinking it must have been Chad.
No, neither one, sir.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay.
Neither one, sir, and I won't slander him, but they're all very smart. It's very smart guys, and we've worked out to be we've become very good friends.
Sal
That's
Tripi,
great.
it is always a treat. I can't thank you enough. This was great. Thanks for all of those tips and info into what's really going on at Publishers Clearinghouse. Thanks so much, Sal.
Thank you, guys. Look forward to being in person next time.
Okay.